Paramount to the Attlee-Truman discussions, 1 million people crammed New York's Central Park to hear the president outline America's stand on atomic power.
There has been talk about the atomic bomb. We must find the answer to the problems created by the release of atomic energy. Indeed, the highest hope of the American people is that world cooperation for peace will soon reach such a state of perfection that atomic methods of destruction can be definitely and effectively outlawed forever.
Осталось 10, 9, 8, 7, 1, 0. Нажатие кнопки, все исключительно с ярчайшим.
Far beyond normal shipping routes they lie, and until 1952, only pearl fishing boats entered the blue waters and left the cliffs surrounding their shores.
Censored by the French authorities, but this picture is impressive evidence of the bomb.
The great result of the cooperation of education with research. This is another victory.
Emergency alert system capabilities.
This is an emergency action notification.
National alert and warning authorities, in coordination with emergency alert system participants.
My fellow Americans, as you know, our attempts at preventing nuclear war have failed.
Finally, Mars has accepted my sacrifices and unleashes me.
I see you, enemy. I see you, enemy. Enemy! Enemy! You are my enemy! And I swear total resistance to you with everything I've got. Disingenuous, fake, false, broke back, twisted, a defiler, a betrayer, a backstabber, a devil! You will pay. Yeah, you think I don't see your face, scum? You don't think I don't see you? I see you, you understand me? I know what you think of me and my family. I see you right back. You understand that? You understand that? You will fall! You will not bring humanity down! God is going to destroy you!
What the fuck is up? Yo. What's up, Anoka? Actually, let's see. What's going on? Let's go. Yeah. All three of us. I think it's you, one other probably legitimate person, and then a bot. But that's cool. Yeah. So I was listening to this conversation earlier, and I think there was a lot of incredibly relevant discourse and back and forth about, obviously, like the Colorado decision. So I just wanted to kind of absorb it again. I didn't hear all of it. I think I probably heard most of it, but I want to absorb it again, at least maybe not all of it, because it was a pretty long conversation, but I think I missed probably the first half of it, so I want to kind of dive into the first half. One of the people that Destiny talks to is this guy Pisco, who's a lawyer, who's a regular on his stream, and there's another guy who I'm actually friends with on Discord. I met him in a Trump bad WIC panel, and his name is Josiah. Yeah. Josiah is very cordial and charitable and a pleasure to talk to. So it's fun to have him on. It's fun to have him in the mix between Destiny and Pisco, because they can get a little bit autistic, which I can say on Kick, and I'm pretty sure I can say that on YouTube too. But yeah, Josiah's there and Pisco's there, and they do some back and forth about Jan 6, and I kind of just wanted to do that while I peruse this multi-hundred-page decision and just kind of gain my own perspective of it, because I think Anoka posed an interesting question the other day about whether or not this is right, and I didn't have like a direct answer to it, because I think some people determine what's right they qualify what's right differently, whereas I probably come from like a more legal background or legal standpoint. You know, somebody like maybe Aristotle or Ben Shapiro, or anybody else might come from a more divine command kind of perspective. So, but yeah, I can't do this on Twitch, so we're gonna do this on Kick and YouTube for a little bit and just hang out. We'll go over to Kick in a little while, and Twitch in a little while, and go hang out with the regulars. But I feel like I got to spend some time doing this kind of restream. So let's see what's going on. But yeah, welcome in. Thanks for hanging out.
Wait. Okay. Would compliance be the same as being complicit? It's complicity. That's a good one. There we go.
There he is.
It's complicity.
Enter Pisco. You know that sound is somebody entering the Discord, and that is the one and only.
Thanks. Yeah. And hey, I just wanted to let you know I sent you a Google Doc laying out the case. So when you're making your J6 research, when it comes to like Trump's constitutional responsibility, take a look, because it's got the citations, the links, the screenies, stuff like that, timestamps. What is the goal of what you're trying to prove to me in this document? I'm trying to persuade you that Trump was both morally and constitutionally obligated to take direct action with respect to law enforcement and the National Guard. Okay. I don't even need a document. I just need, is there a single example of this ever happening in U.S. history? I think, hopefully this will satisfy you, but a national security expert during deposition mentions that Trump deployed the National Guard during the George Floyd protests in D.C. He did that action himself. And there's also record of Trump directly calling on the National Guard in previous situations.
Oh, that's a good one. Can you just show me that?
Sure. Hang on 1 second.
Or is it in this document somewhere?
It is in the doc, yeah.
Okay, Control F, George. During the George Floyd protests in 2020, Trump directly urged and pressured state governors to deploy the National Guard or ask him to do it himself. Trump deployed DHS agents to Portland, Oregon without state permission under Executive Order 13933.
One of the links above, there's also tweets too, where I've just given an order for our National Guard to start the process of withdrawing from Washington, D.C. Now that everything is under perfect control, they'll be going home, but can quickly return if needed. Far fewer protests showed up last night than anticipated. And then above that in the document, National Security Expert William Banks' testimony. Have you ever seen direct evidence of Trump deploying the National Guard in D.C. prior to the election? He said in the summer of 2020, Trump deployed the National Guard and various law enforcement personnel in the wake of protests surrounding the murder of George Floyd. Did the president need any permission to do that? He did not. Do you recall if there was a request from the mayor's office to do that? There was not. And then later on, the guy's like, well, with regards to other people who had authority over various law enforcement personnel, he says, the simplest and most direct authority is the president's responsibility as chief executive under Article 2 of the Constitution to take care that all law be faithfully executed. That includes faithfully executing the transition and counting of electoral votes.
What does faithfully executed mean?
To make sure that all the laws are enforced.
Could part of faithfully executed be delegating a power?
Sure, but as the document kind of lays out, that when you delegate power, you don't abdicate it, so you share it, right?
Sure.
So even if
do you think that Donald Trump, if he would have called Milley, do you think that the National Guard would have been deployed earlier?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, much of the miscommunication, it wasn't just about optics. They just didn't know what to do. I think that there's no evidence that if they got a direct call from the president saying, deploy the National Guard now, I don't think there's any evidence whatsoever that they would have dallied as long as they did. As a matter of fact,
at what point do you think Donald Trump should have called and said, deploy the National Guard?
I think as soon as he saw the rioters, or rather...
Wait, hold on. We got to be very, very, very clear, because keep in mind, the whole early part of the filming and everything was a bunch of people outside just being dumb and shit. At what point, how many hours in? Yeah.
I don't count that. I think there were protesters at that point. I consider them rioters when they broke into the Capitol, when they started engaging in combat against Capitol Police and breaching barricades and stuff like that. But remember, at various points throughout those 3 hours, Trump was repeatedly, Ivanka showed up and other personnel. He was getting calls from Kevin McCarthy, hey, do something. We need you to do something. And he didn't.
What was the response on the phone when he got that call?
The one for Kevin McCarthy was...
Wait, real quick. Just link it to me. Can you link me this phone call? Or I can Google for it and look, okay?
It's in...
So Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah.
Kevin McCarthy, phone call,
J6.
Donald Trump, January 6th.
Yeah. He gives a response, something to the effect of, well, I guess they just care more about the stolen election than you do, Kevin.
During a heated phone call as Jan 6 rioters are breaking into the U.S. Capitol, Houseman earlier, Kevin McCarthy told former Donald Trump that those breaching the building were trying to fucking kill him, according to an account in the upcoming book. The new detail about Jan 6 call comes from Weapons of Mass Delusion, when the Republican Party lost its mind. Representative Jamie Lana revealed that, McCarthy's account of the call to House Republicans and a CNN story about the call added additional details from other GP lawmakers. Well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are. Citing a Republican whom McCarthy told the call about a few hours later. Is this him calling Trump asking for help? Or is this just him calling Trump and complaining about people outside?
I'm pretty sure it's him calling and asking Trump for help. Let me pull up the...
Okay, because I don't see that written here. It sounds like McCarthy is calling Trump and is like, look what your fucking people are doing, you fucking retard. And Trump's like, well... Looks like you should have rigged the election for me.
Okay, well, while I'm looking for that, do you think that McCarthy has to ask for help explicitly for the president to do his duty? I think that's unreasonable.
Okay. I think this is a chasm that one of our brains are poisoned. It's either yours or mine. I don't know whose, but this is just a chasm.
That's why I wish you'd read the fucking document. I did all the research.
I'm looking at it, but I don't think anything in here is addressing anything that I But I mean, I can read it all if you want. Wait.
Yeah, please.
I will say, I mean, Josiah Josiah is, and he's said this before. He said this to me personally on the WIC panel. He was like, "Look, I am an unapologetic partisan. You know, I am a Democrat. I'm just going to put that right out there. You know, I don't like." You know, he didn't say anything like, "I don't like labels like liberal or progressive or leftist or anything." He didn't say anything like that. But his emphasis was on, "Look, I am a Democrat and I want Democrats to win, and that's just how I go." He's kind of like an "I'm really important," like IRI kind of guy. Although I think way less smug and pretentious. Although I do respect IRI for the platform that he's built for himself, and I do, and I will say it takes a lot of fucking moxie to fucking stand up to the river to the sea enthusiasts that come into his chat or probably existed in his community before he knew. But IRI is a supporter of Israel, and I think that's been an interesting kind of dynamic to see because he is also very unapologetically Democrat. But I think you probably just see overwhelming support for Palestine generally towards the left, and IRI is just not that person. I mean, he's for everything on the left, everything. But when it comes to this, he's had to fucking put his money where his mouth is. So he may have lost some following for being pro-Israel. But I mean, I will respect the courage, but he's still fucking smug and fucking pretentious sometimes. Josiah is a much more palatable, charitable version of IRI, but he clearly wants to sell Destiny on this narrative.
I mean, if it's completely fucking wrong, go ahead and dissect it.
I don't think anything is wrong. Here is like the incredibly. Also, hold on, because I don't know how much you've gotten roped in with Pisco's dog shit argument. Okay, if you're trying to make the general argument that on some moral level, Trump failed, or even on some level of like duty as president to the United States, like failed at multiple points in all the lead up to and during the January 6th riots, I probably mostly agree with that. But Pisco's argument was that Donald Trump intentionally delayed the National Guard's deployment to the Capitol on January 6th during the riots.
Correct. That's not my position.
That's fine. That part is delusional. Pisco believes it with no evidence whatsoever, and will probably believe it until the end of time. But the former argument, I probably would generally mostly agree with you. Although it's not going to come down to process questions like should Donald Trump have called people to like order the National Guard down? It's probably going to come down to why didn't he call off his people earlier? Why did he give that speech? And the failures of him deploying the National Guard too fervently prior to this that caused all the bureaucratic red tape and nightmares in terms of getting it back to the Capitol. Those would be, I like roughly agree with that. But
I'm sure we all agree that Trump morally failed in terms of the influence that he had on the rioters themselves. But what I want to make abundantly clear is that he had both a moral and a constitutional imperative to use his law enforcement powers to stop the insurrection as it was happening.
I love you. Okay, if you say this one more time, we're never connecting on this. Okay, you keep saying this phrase. Okay, and we keep misunderstanding my issue with what's going on, or maybe you're not even arguing this. Okay, if I walk into a McDonald's restaurant, okay, and the restaurant is dirty, and I look at the supervisor and I say, you have a duty to make sure that this restaurant is clean. That does not mean that the supervisor needs to get a rag and go clean tables. That's not what that means. They will delegate that responsibility to front of house staff. When you keep saying over and over again, Donald Trump has a responsibility to ensure that that the Capitol remains safe by deploying the National Guard if necessary, I agree with you. But we're not arguing over that the responsibility to the office of the president. We're arguing over the process. And you and Pisco did this all night, or mainly Pisco, but this conflation of the duty of a person is the same thing as they personally have to do something. These are two totally different statements. I agree with the former. The latter is almost certainly not true.
So okay, to me this is not analogous because the dishwasher example would be analogous, and I think you mentioned this yesterday, to Trump like picking up a gun and going to defend the Capitol himself.
Correct.
I think the supervisor then has an obligation to turn to the manager or whoever, that like the owner turns to the supervisor. He has an obligation to turn to somebody and say, clean this shit up. And if it doesn't get cleaned up, then he goes to somebody else, or if need be, he does it himself.
Correct.
But I'm saying,
I agree.
Yeah, but Trump failed to do all that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I don't know if that responsibility for Trump to be taking care of this in the middle of such an unimaginably dynamic situation, I don't know if that responsibility would be levied on any other leader ever at that point in time.
Well, that's and again, this is where
this is why I asked you for an example of like, can you show me a case where, because let's say, for instance, you were to say, well, actually, prior to this, when Obama was in office, there was a huge situation going on. Now, this is way too analogous. I wouldn't expect you to have an example this precise because it'd be unfair. But like, let's say there were protesters in D.C. and the National Guard is being overwhelmed and there was a bureaucratic muck-up and Obama's watching TV or getting reports and Obama was like, well, hold on. And he picks up the phone and he's like, whoever he needs to talk to, I need the National Guard deployed right the fuck now. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the bureaucratic bullshit is, but it needs to go. If you can show me like, this is kind of like, yeah, presidents will do this. It's DC, it's their ballpark. You know, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it seems like that norm is established. It seems like the president himself needs to make the call. He has to be the one to do it. But I've never seen that demonstrated. I don't think that's the case. But if it is, then I would be more likely to agree. Yeah.
Well, again, so there's some screenshots and some links in here that you may or may not find persuasive. But what I'm saying is that we have record of Trump via executive order, via tweet, publicly issuing orders to the National Guard. So if there's a norm, because the president delegates the authority and responsibility day-to-day of the National Guard to the Secretary of Defense, who in turn directed it to the Secretary of the Army. My case is that Donald Trump does not give up the authority or responsibility. He shares it, and his is still supreme. Constitutionally, he has the highest level of authority and responsibility. So even if there's a norm which says, under most situations, the president's not going to be involved with this shit, the circumstances at the Capitol, which he were watching, an unprecedented attack on the Capitol, I think merited an extraordinary response, especially if he didn't see any evidence that the National Guard was being deployed. And we know that he's intruded on that norm in the past when he's publicly tweeted things like, I'm ordering the National Guard to withdraw from D.C. That didn't come from the Secretary of Defense. That came from Trump himself, his Twitter account. So if that norm
I'm ordering
exists,
the National... Okay, can I just read through this and then see what examples of this are? Okay,
please.
Yeah. Okay. Donald Trump is responsible for law enforcement in action during the insurrection. This is the conclusion of the House January 6th Select Committee comprised of educated government officials after 2 years' worth of thorough investigation and sworn testimony from experts. Wait, was this what we read yesterday?
I don't know if we read this particular part because I don't recall.
I mean, like, was it part of that 700-page document?
It was part of it, yes.
Okay, then I would disagree. I don't think that was in the conclusion at all. But I'll read parts.
We'll read the excerpt, yeah.
Sure. Although this doesn't seem to be the conclusion. This seems to be an earlier part, but I'm reading. President Trump had authority and responsibility to direct deployment of the National Guard in the District of Columbia, but never gave any order to deploy the National Guard on January 6th or any other day, nor did he instruct any federal law enforcement agency to assist, because the authority to deploy the National Guard has been delegated to the Department of Defense. The Secretary of Defense could and ultimately did deploy the Guard. Although evidence identifies a likely miscommunication between members of the civilian leadership in the Department of Defense impacting the timing of the deployment, the committee has found no evidence the Department of Defense intentionally delayed deployment of the National Guard. The Select Committee recognizes that some of the department had genuine concerns, counseling caution that President Trump might give an illegal order to use the military in support of his efforts to overturn the election. I feel like this whole paragraph is like hardcore reinforcing everything I just said.
I don't think so, not with the word responsibility, because to me, I know you don't dispute the authority part, but to me, the quibble is over responsibility. It seems like you don't, once he delegates that authority, you don't think he has the responsibility to deploy the National Guard.
We're talking about responsibility in different ways now. Mm-hmm. For instance, going back to the restaurant example, if you walk into the restaurant and you say, hey, why is the restaurant dirty? And the supervisor's like, fuck. That's the supervisor's responsibility, and that like he'll be the one that ultimately takes the fall for it. But it's still a delegated task. It's still not his like individual responsibility to go and do it. Ultimately, it's like his job to have that done, but it's still a delegated responsibility. And
could we change the word maybe to operational responsibility? Does he have any operational responsibility to do this?
Doesn't seem to be the case now. I've never seen evidence of that.
I think we got off the wrong foot, Stephen. I respect you, I like you a lot.
Yeah.
I think that there's just been a really big miscommunication between us yesterday.
Okay.
And I think that it doesn't have to be that way.
Okay.
Is that fair?
It can be
And
however we want
I
it to be,
think
yeah.
that you heard me to allege
They are going to fucking bicker and argue for the next like 5 hours. Even though he starts off on this foot, he starts off saying, "I think we got off on the wrong foot here," but they will just. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you've ever heard of like a Destiny Pisco conversation, but they are pretty fucking hilarious. So at least he's trying to open it up, saying, "Hey, let's start over. Let's start over." But they don't. They just they go right back and they dive right back into the shit that they were diving into the other day.
a conspiracy. Is that what you heard me to allege?
Yes, I think I said it several times. I'll say it one more time. What it felt like is you were saying that the delay of the deployment of the National Guard to DC, that was intentionally somehow done by Trump. Whether he mucked it up or was fucking shit up or was abdicating an expected duty, there were people waiting for him to call. It was just Trump mucked this up somehow. He wanted that situation to unfold as it did without the National Guard being there.
Yeah, I don't think that you're going to do this, and I don't think that you should, but I think you trust your audience, and I took the time to go back and listen to the start of that exchange. I don't think anybody from the words I said could derive that I was alleging that I had enough evidence or sufficient evidence to allege that Trump conspired to tell anybody that, like, hey, don't listen to Mayor Bowser, don't deploy. And to be clear, I don't have that evidence, and I don't believe, if you go back and watch the start of that conversation, that either A, I said that there was a conspiracy or implied it.
Okay. I feel like I remember different. I feel like I restated that position, but it might be that either we were both debating or I was unclear or something. I mean, I'm not going to argue with what I think or thought your position was yesterday. If that's your position, then I would say the thing I'm saying to Josiah, that we're probably pretty close then on things that happened.
Here's what I did say, Stephen.
Okay.
What I said was that he is responsible and that the delay is his fault. Do you understand what I say when I say it's his fault?
No.
Okay. When I say it's his fault, I mean that he had a responsibility or a duty. However, I'm not even going to say it's imposed legally necessarily, though I think it is. I don't think it's like a justiciable legal duty, but it is a legal duty, in my opinion, given his oath, to have done something, and he didn't do it. And I understand and respect that there could be a lot of things that he technically has the authority to do where there would not be a responsibility and where there would not be a duty. The examples that you provide of, you know, does he have to actually wield an AK-47 or whatever in Fallujah, or like where does he have to actually go to the different places? Of course not. And sometimes when you bring up the example of Merrick Garland, do we expect the president to interfere in prosecutions? No. When there is not a situation that's important enough, or where there's some other really good policy normative reason to separate the president from those actions, then it would make sense to say, hey, we're not going to put this on Trump, and we're not going to say he has an operational responsibility beyond just the buck stops now.
Okay, sure. Can I ask?
Doesn't end at the buck stops now.
Sure, yeah.
It goes beyond the buck stops now.
Yeah. Can I just ask, like, broadly speaking, like in speak as many words as you need to explain, what is your impression of why the National Guard was so delayed in being deployed to the Capitol? What do you think happened?
I think nobody ordered them to go and
yeah, but why?
assist. So I don't think that there is good evidence in the record for a reasonable rationale.
I think there's really good evidence in the record.
On the Department of Defense side.
Okay.
For why the delay took as long as it did. Now, we can go back and say, well, we're worried about optics. How far does that argument get you?
Well, hold on. Wait, careful. You can't say we're not going back and saying it. People, I think, in the room at the time were concerned about it. And it was a concern prior to when they were trying to figure out how many people to deploy. And it was a concern of Bowser as well. This was like a widespread concern after George Floyd and previous deployment of National Guard.
Bowser's going to come up a lot. I think Bowser is the mayor of D.C. And there was a question as to whether this would fall under... because DC is such a unique district, whether or not this would fall under Bowser's, I don't know if they're male or female, but Bowser's purview or wheelhouse, as opposed to it being the Capitol and it possibly being the president's responsibility, or whoever the president delegates that responsibility to.
In bad ways for Trump's photo op and whatever other bullshit in DC. So the optics thing.
I'll ask you, at the time a request is made by Congress, do you think that the DOD should be weighing the urgent request from Congress? Because there's a delay for the congressional request. Given the request, the urgent request from Congress at the time, do you think that they should be balancing optics versus the urgent request from Congress?
I'm going to say yes, and then you're going to laugh, but that's because retrospectively we can see how it turned out. But now that we know how it turned out, we can say, oh, well, they should have sent it immediately. But the issue, it seemed, what was happening in the control room was once Sund made that call for the request, it seemed like people were trying to figure out what the fuck is actually happening. Do we need to send the National Guard? How many people do we deploy? What type of mission are they equipped for? Because mission scope and the type of deployment was also a huge concern. Because we can say right now, for instance, that well, the answer is obviously yes. But imagine when that first call goes through, they deploy the National Guard immediately. The National Guard starts showing up and beating people up or, kicking people out or whatever. And now you've got Donald Trump's National Guard standing outside the Congress of the... this is the exact situation that they're trying to avoid. And it felt like in that control room, a lot of what they were... What? Go ahead.
I kind of see this as inconsistent.
Wait, what part? Yeah, okay, hold on, wait. I want to take notes super clearly because I think my whole story, and now it's even more reinforced by everything that I just read yesterday. So I don't think it's inconsistent. Okay, go ahead.
I think it's really inconsistent because on the one hand, we say Trump was always willing to send in the National Guard. He told everybody to approve the request. As soon as the request was given, he had already authorized and delegated his people to do it right away. He was so cooperative in the lead up to January 6th that he was telling everybody that, hey, we'll give you whatever you need. We'll actually deploy it. And the story, the narrative that I was given, I think partially by you, and I don't know how strongly you felt it, was that no, Mayor Bowser put her foot down. The Nancy Pelosi put her foot down. These people put their foot down and said no. And so how could it be that there's this humongous willingness that's alleged among the Trump supporters that he was always willing to do? He was just waiting for the request. Okay. But then when the request is actually made, now there's that delay. Do you see the inconsistency?
Nope.
Okay.
Do you want me to explain?
Yeah.
Okay. Neither of these two things are. So the first part that you said, Trump was always willing to send in the National Guard. He told everyone to approve the request. He was so cooperative in the lead up, and Bowser and Pelosi said no. So I think we have enough facts that all of that is true. Okay. So one is we have the statements from Mayor Bowser about not needing more police. I think Miller had talked about how Trump had talked about how you might need 5,000 or 10,000 people there, and Miller thought that was insane, but that wasn't an official request that Trump put in. It was just a conversation they had.
Correct.
So if we assume these two statements are true, well, we know Bowser's statement probably is true. We know, and then we also know, I think just narratively, that it actually does seem like something Donald Trump would do. Donald Trump loves the National Guard, and he loves his supporters, and he would love to send the National Guard to be with his supporters, because I think Trump is a fucking fascist. None of these things are inconsistent with any of Trump's prior behavior. None of that is surprising. Now, when you say when the request is made, why is there a delay? Because I think this is also narratively supported by the entire history of Trump's administration. Donald Trump is not only a fascist and not only in love with himself, he's also a little bit fucking retarded. And Donald Trump constantly has people around him that are trying to channel the things that he's saying into more reasonable things that are actually functional, because Donald Trump has no fucking idea how to actually run a government. He doesn't know what he's doing. This is why when he wanted to do the Muslim ban, for instance, he had to run to Giuliani, hey, how the fuck do I actually do this? Am I allowed to do this or whatever? At all points in time. So when you say the request is made, why is there a delay? The reason why there's a delay is because even the Republicans know that Donald Trump is way too fucking hungry when it comes to deploying the National Guard. There were a lot of bad optics going on before, and I think one of the statements, I don't remember if it was by Miller or someone else, even said that the idea that the National Guard would show up and steal a ballot box is at the forefront of everybody's minds. People are worried about this. So when that request is made, it's not made to Donald Trump. It goes through the ordinary channels. It went to the lieutenant general of the army or whatever, and then it went to Miller, and then there was that 3-hour delay between there, where it feels like what was happening in the Situation Room was everybody's trying to evaluate, well, how bad is it actually? What the fuck is going on? Who do we actually end up sending? And then finally Miller, without ever making a phone call to Trump, finally approves the request. But the lack of information,
I misunderstood you this whole time. Okay, so are you saying that it wasn't Trump who was worrying about optics, it was Miller and the DOD?
No, Donald Trump doesn't even know what optics means. Yeah, no, it was the DOD. It was Miller and everybody beneath him that were obsessing over the optics at the time.
Okay, so now we have a problem.
Okay.
You see the problem?
Not at all, but tell me.
What's Trump's excuse?
For
if
what?
he's not worried about optics, you just said Trump is not worried about optics. He never worries about optics. What is, he would have no reason to, you said he loves the National Guard. He loves deploying it. He's in love with the National Guard. What's his excuse for not deploying it?
Because he just wouldn't think to, probably, would be my guess.
Wait, he wouldn't think to deploy the National Guard. He said he loved it.
Yeah, and he talked about having them there prior, and he talked to his DOD, the fucking Miller's role. The Department of Defense had Miller about doing it, but then past that, it's not it's not in his direct purview. He's not going to be the one like making the call and sending the National Guard or anything. It's just not what he's doing.
I thought you said that he loved deploying the National Guard.
He does, and he talked about it prior to Jan 6, and Bowser shot it down. She's like, no, we don't need it. So they had all of that set up and done, and then Jan 6 rolls around. If you want to make the argument that Donald Trump should have gone above Miller or been above Miller and made calls below Miller or to Miller, I guess, and say, hey, we need the National Guard deployed there right now. One, I don't know if there was enough information on TV to show that they...
Yeah, it's a good chat. This is why I wanted to listen to it. They definitely had a good back and forth. I think there was a lot of friction there, but I think friction kind of scratches the surface of where the good ideas are, so I don't know. But I think some of the concepts that they bring up would be interesting. I mean, obviously, I think they're viewing this through the lens of the Colorado decision. So that's kind of what I want to do too. It'd be nice if there was like a panel at some point in the next week or two that was, analyzing the Colorado decision for me to come on and give a take. So I was listening to that. I meant the absurd Conradville and Aristotle. Where are they talking right now? Where are they talking at? Are you guys in somebody else's stream? Is it like Casey's stream or something? Or Gorb stream? Conradville and Aristotle.
Needed the National Guard there immediately. I don't know how many hours had passed before we're like, enough people are inside that they don't have the manpower to deal with it. I don't know if anybody knew that during the situation that was on the outside. Do you know if that's the case? Like, did Sun call Trump and say, hey, just so you know, there's not enough people in here to deal with the situation? I think that became apparent like hours.
Oh, you meant the absence of. Sorry, I missed that. Yeah. Well, if you're listening to this and you want to jump in the VC in a little bit, not exactly right now, because I still want to absorb what they're talking about a little bit and kind of bounce it off the document. But I mean, if you have a Jan 6 take, you can jump in the VC in a little bit.
I
think there's enough. Whether or not you can say that Trump had an actual awareness of specific requests made by specific people, and I don't sit here and say that I have a full command of the facts about his knowledge of the specific requests. I think that there's sufficient evidence in the record to know that people were calling him, both internal aides and external people, legislators, calling Trump personally, telling him shit was fucked up and he needed to do something.
Okay, real quick. Okay, and then I'm done talking to you today until you bring me this one thing. Okay, so you can go spend reading all you want. I want a single piece of evidence for that one thing you just said. You said people were calling Trump saying he needed to do something. Yeah.
So the call from Kevin McCarthy, the testimony from Cassidy.
No. Hold on. Don't do that. You're not gish galloping me. Okay.
Okay.
One at a time. I looked at the call from Kevin McCarthy. Unless there is more text from that does not seem to be the case. Seemed like McCarthy was calling Trump to cuss him out. I don't see a phone call from McCarthy saying, like, please send help. We need help immediately. Where is the help? I don't see that call. Now, there might be one. If there is, just show it to me. And then you mentioned a second name afterwards. If you want, we can go over any call there is.
So you think it's plausible that Donald Trump was not aware of the need for assistance?
Stephen, can you go to page 624 of that report? It goes into more detail about Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. Sure. Also, hold on. If we're going to play the asking question game, Pisco, do you think that do you think it's reasonable to assume that Donald Trump knew that the entire apparatus was waiting on him to sign off on deployment of the National Guard?
Well, I think that. Wait, your question is.
Let me ask again. Do you think that it's fair?
Wait,
go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand it first.
Okay.
Do you think that he knew that everyone was waiting on him?
Yes.
Right? If nothing was communicated to him, as you're alleging, then how would he know that people were waiting for him? Is the answer to your question, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
No, but that is assuming that there's not an independent, freestanding responsibility on behalf of Trump to, in response to the invasion of our capital act on his own accord, which you just said he loves to mobilize the National Guard.
You're conflating things. When I say he loves when I say he loves to mobilize the National Guard, his loving to mobilize the National Guard could take the form of talking to Miller and saying like, hey, if you see these things popping up, you need to go and deploy the National Guard.
Why didn't he talk to Miller?
It sounds like he did talk to Miller. Prior to January 6th, Miller testified that Trump said they could have whatever resources they needed. That's why it seems like on January 6th, when Miller finally authorizes the request, there was never a call made to the White House. Miller had everything he needed to deploy those troops, and he didn't.
Well, Miller didn't need that.
Can you acknowledge that I just completely satisfactorily answered both of those questions? Well, restate your question, because I need you to acknowledge that I'm answering. You said, why? What was your first question here? Why didn't Donald Trump authorize it? I said, one, he did
talk to Miller.
He did. Do you acknowledge that he talked to Miller in the lead up to this, saying that anything they need, they can have? Do you acknowledge that or no?
He is alleged to have said that based on Miller's statement and nothing else. I acknowledge that evidence is in the record.
Okay. Sure. Number one. So Miller, and then number two, do you acknowledge that?
Wait. I'm not referencing the statement made before January 6th. Why didn't he speak to Miller on January 6th?
Because he doesn't seem like he needed to. On
Do you
January,
think he has a responsibility to get in touch with the people of the Defense Department?
On January 6th, is it true that the National Guard was deployed to the Capitol without anybody ever calling Trump?
We don't know whether people talk to Trump.
I'm sorry.
Directly.
Let me state this more favorably. Is it true?
Wait.
I'm not answering a question. You answer.
You don't have to be aggressive. Why can't we just tone it down?
Because you're playing the word games.
You're being super aggressive.
I know, because you're playing word games. You're not even trying to.
You asked me directly.
You keep asking this vague question like, does Trump have the responsibility? And I already said why this question is not. You're missing the whole point of the conversation.
I'm not missing the point. You're missing the point, respectfully.
Okay.
You thought that I was alleging a conspiracy, and my entire argument is not based on any necessary communication between Trump and his subordinates. It does not depend on the communications between Trump and the DOD. To the extent there were zero, right? It doesn't depend on Bowser's actions or non-actions.
Sure. My question is a simple one.
Did
Miller deploy the National Guard to D.C.?
He did.
Okay. So does that imply that Miller already had authorization to do it?
He had authorization.
Delegated authority.
Without the conversation. What your question is implying that the conversation with Trump gave him authorization to do it.
Correct.
He had authorization independent of the conversation with Trump. So your
from a
question
Nixon era executive order.
Yeah,
hold on. Is there any evidence that Trump gave any sort of contraindication for Miller deploying the National Guard?
That's not my argument. I've never. You keep going back to this.
This
right?
is all I'm trying to establish. Maybe we can agree on this, and you can make your argument independent of this. Do you agree that on the day of January 6th, Miller had everything at his disposal, meaning proper delegation and prior authorization from the President of the United States, that if he got that call, he could have deployed the National Guard instantly?
Yes.
You agree that he could have done that? Okay. Yes. Then the question is, why then, if Miller had all the authorization from the president and all the delegated responsibilities, why would we expect the President of the United States to make a phone call underneath him to do that ahead of him, when he's the one who's got the delegated responsibility and he's got all the authorization to do it?
So the president also has authorization to do this.
What a meaningless statement.
Wait. You're being rude as hell, bro.
Because you keep saying the most random things. We know that the president also has authorization. We're talking about who has the delegated responsibility on the day-to-day, who takes care of this.
So the president of the United States, in certain circumstances, right, in situations in which they're not foreseen, maybe, or where incredible things happen, responsibilities can shift. Wouldn't you agree? If we found out that Miller wasn't responsive at all, right, and just wasn't answering his cell phone and was just catatonic,
yes,
would you think that would you impose a responsibility on Trump to do something and to authorize?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, you're gonna laugh, but the reality is that the chain of command is the most essential when shit is chaotic. Maybe we just fundamentally disagree on this, but when shit is chaotic, this idea that you're having people many steps above making phone calls below, I would be shocked if anybody from the military wants to jump in and answer. I would be shocked if somebody from the military would say.
It became a huge part of the conversation. They started talking about, they started talking about 9/11 and started reaching back to Obama and Bush era policies, which was interesting. I even sent in a super chat around this time, because they started talking about people on much higher echelons of the chain of command are not going to be walking down to some of the lowest ranks to be like, hey, go over there and guard that thing. They're not going to do that. But this concept gets brought up here in the conversation.
Oh yeah, that's the most important time to get people 5 ranks ahead, calling privates to give them orders.
Yeah.
Like when
Would
shit
it
is
be
that is
inappropriate?
yeah.
Which would never fucking happen. It would never happen. Now, if I'm walking down the street as a E3 or an E4, I'm a young private, and I'm walking by, and walking past me is a lieutenant colonel, a commissioned officer, and they say, hey, pick up that piece of trash. I'm just going to pick it up. I'm not going to say, well, obviously that's a lawful order, but I need to hear that from my squad leader. I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to pick it up. However, that's just a very playful, random interaction that you're just observing customs and courtesies. You're not going to tell them, oh, well, let me go to my team leader and let them consult our squad leader and platoon sergeant to make sure that this is good to go. You're not going to do that. However, in the case of mobilizing to the capital to defend it from the onslaught of MAGA, it's going to be a whole different thing. I wouldn't just, if some 06 came up to me and said, hey, you need to go over there and guard that thing, I'd be like, look, you're a bigwig, and if you tell me what to do, I will do it. But it's got to, in the same way that I have to observe the chain of command, so do you. So they get into this a little bit, and for me, this was interesting because I could relate to it a lot.
Because also, I just want to be clear, the example, Pisco, that you just gave that I agree with you where Donald Trump should do it would be when the next in command is incapacitated. Then the order would move up the chain of command for sure. But would I expect during times of chaos somebody at the top of the chain to come down and communicate with somebody beneath multiple layers of leadership? Never, actually, never.
No, I mean, he answers directly to the president. It's not like there are multiple. This is him and the top heads of the Department of Defense with respect to this area. So it's not like multiple layers. He's not talking to privates. He's talking to major military figures. Okay?
Well, and speaking of major military figures, I'm curious, to your point, Stephen, are you not at all, do you put any weight behind the fact that Chairman Milley was... No, you don't? No.
Okay,
meaningless statement.
Let's just get super duper clear. Mm-hmm. Do you think it would be inappropriate for Donald Trump to have taken the initiative and mobilized and authorized? And overruled Miller's complacency?
I don't know if Miller was being complacent.
Whatever he was being, do you think that it would be inappropriate for Trump to assume direct control and authorize?
I don't think it would be inappropriate for Trump to contact Miller. I think it would be inappropriate for Trump to go beneath Miller. Yes.
Not. So it's inappropriate for the President of the United States ever to authorize the National Guard to act.
That's a totally different question.
Is that true? Is that a fair representation of your view or not?
I said it would be inappropriate for Donald Trump to go beneath Miller to make statements directly to the lieutenant of the army, whatever leader of the army guy.
No, just to authorize it. To authorize
it was already authorized, so Trump can authorize it, yes.
Wait, would it be inappropriate for Trump to authorize the action? That is, whoever has operational control of the DC National Guard, I forget which general it is or which...
Secretary of the Army, I think, under the Secretary of Defense.
The actual person in charge of the troops. There's someone on the ground. Mm-hmm. If Trump were to directly call and say, I'm the commander-in-chief, I'm ordering you to do this, do you think that would be inappropriate?
I think that would be unbelievably inappropriate, yes.
Way inappropriate.
Okay.
Super inappropriate. That would be fucking weird if that happened.
Hold on. Not only would I say that, I would say I'm factually correct. And if you disagree, we should bring in other people in any sort of managerial structure or in any sort of military structure. And I would be shocked if they disagreed with me.
This is when I said in the super chat. I was like, yeah, I was active duty. It would be fucking weird. Believe me.
Aside from cases where people are literally incapacitated, yeah, the idea that somebody multiple chains above would contact people beneath, I would say that is almost always inappropriate. Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to bring in? Is there anybody else from anybody that's worked in chains of command or military operations that wants to jump in and try to come up? Because I'm shocked that you would disagree on this.
What I'm totally disagreeing with you in the circumstances. I'm not as a regular matter, of course. Chain of command is extremely important. I'm not denying that. I'm not refuting that. What I am suggesting to you is there are certain moments of emergency where people are expected to do everything in their power to prevent certain outcomes. And that means doing things like ordering people underneath.
I understand.
The principal's level.
I understand what
that?
you're saying, but in emergency situations, if stuff like that started to happen, things will turn into chaos.
Well, the President of the United States has mobilized the National Guard before. You ruminated, brought that
You
up to
don't.
your
Neither of you have given me this is the word game that I just talked about before. We're not talking about whether he has asked for the guard to be mobilized. We're talking about if he gave like the direct execution command himself without like passing it off to Miller or something first. I don't know if that's been the case.
I mean,
That's what we're talking about. We're not just talking about, did he order the National Guard?
That actually really helps. Okay. Do you think that Donald Trump should have told Miller to mobilize the National Guard? Ordered Miller to order the person?
Yeah, but it seems like he already gave him that authorization, which is evidenced by the fact that Miller did it without ever calling Trump.
Maybe my question wasn't clear, sorry. Do you think he should have ordered Miller, not given him the control, but said, I'm giving you an order, mobilize the National Guard? No chain of command problems there. Do you think he should have done that?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think that Trump should have ordered Miller to mobilize the National Guard for January 6th?
No, I don't think so.
Why not?
Because Donald Trump is not the guy with the eyes on the ground. He's not in a situation room getting updates or reports on what's going on. He doesn't have the operational the awareness that everybody beneath him does. Him making a phone call to start demanding things to happen, I don't think is an appropriate action for him to do. I think the failure seems to be Miller's here, or a combined bureaucratic failure, which is exactly what this 700-page report essentially said at the end. I didn't see anything in their conclusion blaming Trump. All of the blame seemed to be on all of the bureaucratic red tape nightmare shit that got set up because of the worries of what it would look like to deploy the National Guard to the Capitol with the election certification going on.
When is it okay for the president to make orders? Under what circumstances?
Probably almost never directly but beneath people beneath him.
No, to people directly beneath him, to the Secretary of Defense. When would it be appropriate in your mind for the Commander-in-Chief of the United States to issue orders to the military?
Probably, in terms of like military operations, probably almost never. That'd be my guess. Like, I'm sure they're going to be like,
take out Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, that's not a.
That's not military?
I don't know. Hold on. Do you think that there's a difference between having a high-level decision like, should we get involved in Bosnia? Should we be assassinating Osama bin Laden? Do you think there's a difference between that versus Barack Obama or Donald Trump, like making a phone call and being like, hey, Bravo 1, you guys are flying this route. I want you to actually drop like an hour ahead of schedule and kill him a little bit earlier. Do you understand the difference between those two things?
I don't think that that's the kind of granularity that I'm applying.
That is exactly what I'm talking about. Here's a question: do you think that the Do you think the president issued a single on-the-ground command when it came to the assassination of Osama bin Laden?
He authorized the strike. I don't know about the
correction. You're correct. You're right.
He was given a plan. So listen, I don't know. When you say operational, do you mean the different plans given to him? Do you mean like to enter what areas, how many planes or helicopters?
Here's my This is my guess. Okay. When it came to the assassination of Osama bin Laden, Obama probably said, "Yeah, go for it, do it." It was a team underneath him that put together the plan. It was some military SEAL Team 6 Bravo team, whatever, whoever the fuck did it. I don't know, the movie, whatever did it, right? These guys probably did the thing. And Obama...
Yeah, because also, too, especially with a situation like what he's describing right now, I mean, I'm not a Navy SEAL. I'm not a fucking Army Ranger, right? I'm just a fucking, prior service non-commissioned officer. That never deployed. I'm non-combat, but I have familiarity with how this chain of command works. I mean, in a situation like raiding Osama bin Laden's compound, obviously there's going to be a plan presented and it's going to be approved. Once it's approved and it's executed, there's going to be things that don't go according to plan, and they're Osama bin Laden's compound is like a very special situation, but things are going to happen that don't go according to plan, and people on the ground or people involved in one way or another as far as the chain of command goes, are going to have to make decisions on the fly that may not comport with the president's initial approval. That may not comport. They're gonna they're taking risks when that kind of stuff happens. But at the end of the day, the mission was approved, and the mission has an objective. So it's not going to be the case that like that Barack Obama is going to monitor every single drone strike that happens in Syria, or Bush is going to observe every moment that happened in Iraq, or Trump on January 6th. It's not going to be the case. They're just going to give the initial approval, and when larger issues come up, then they may have to seek reapproval. But for the most part, you're delegating that authority to the DoD. For sure.
Was probably kind of kept up to date as things were ongoing. I would be shocked, and I could be totally wrong, I would be shocked if Obama himself issued a command to the military dictating any part of that operation. Mm-hmm. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I disagree with that.
Okay, so you think Barack Obama was controlling parts of that operation from a room? He was making phone calls and giving advice. Well, maybe you guys should land earlier. Maybe you guys should actually wait. The weather's bad. You think he was making those kinds of calls?
Let me explain it. I don't understand. With other people, when you have these conversations, you're so good faith. You give them so much space and room to talk and to like elaborate their opinions. I don't understand why in this situation you feel like I should not have that space.
Because you keep playing all these word games to get it away. Because I'm trying to keep you very narrow. Because you keep making really broad statements that have nothing to do with what we're talking about, and then we get like yanked to like a totally different conversation.
Okay, so the when I say that the president absolutely did give orders to the military in the attack on Osama bin Laden.
Yes.
What I'm saying to you is the decision for the military to essentially go invade the airspace of a sovereign country with America, with which America is not at war, that is Pakistan, that is a decision that can only fall to the president, and the president has a duty to stay informed, and it was only on the president's orders and no one else's that attack went through. Now, if you're saying that did he personally oversee the helicopters, did he personally pick out the teams? Of course not. He has to delegate things in terms of the operational aspect.
Yes,
of it.
I agree.
But I've never denied that. But we're talking about the big strokes.
No, we're not. January 6th is that a personal order. You're not looking for the broad strokes. The broad strokes, Trump already said, yeah, if you guys need the National Guard, do whatever you need, which is evidenced by the fact that Miller never needed to consult Trump to deploy the National Guard. You're looking for a specific command. You want Barack Obama to say, land the helicopter 30 minutes later. That's the type of command you're looking to issue. Would you agree that Obama issuing direct commands on that mission would have been wholly inappropriate, even though he's the commander-in-chief?
Depends on what you're talking about.
Do you think that as the mission is ongoing, do you think Barack Obama is like ordering the helicopter pilots or this?
They do it sometimes. There's a situation room and they're like, do you want to take the shot, Mr. President? That's happened before.
Sure. On a broad level where maybe where that's discussed beforehand.
Happened.
But like that's when he's roped in specifically, like you just said, in the situation room for where things are happening. Yeah. That's not him just like making phone calls like, hey, like I saw this on TV, like, maybe you should do this or maybe you should do that. In general, this is all going to be delegated to other military teams. My guess is when the president's in the situation room, he's probably sitting there watching 99% of the time. That'd be my guess.
If you go back and you look at the what was going on in the Cuban Missile Crisis and the involvement of JFK and his team, there was high communication and back and forth between JFK and the military people, and he was doing things opposite to what the military people were telling him. He was not just deferring to everything that they were saying. He was taking a close look at what they were suggesting, and he did not agree to do airstrikes on all these targets in Cuba. And he was an active participant. He is the commander in chief. He has a responsibility above and beyond just being a receptacle of information. He has an affirmative duty to seek out information, to seek out opinions, to inform himself, to be an active member in issues of great national security. That seems like a fairly non-controversial principle. Don't you agree?
I agree. I agree with every single thing you just said. None of it mattered. None of it has anything to do with what we're talking about.
Donald, in January 6th, don't you agree January 6th is an issue of absolutely maximum national security concern?
I'm going to probably agree with the next 5 things you say. They have nothing to do with what we're talking about, but go ahead.
Didn't Trump have a duty to be in that situation room, to be involved, to be asking questions, to be wanting to inform himself of what's going on and what's the state of our military? Do they need help? What's going on? Put me on the home with these people.
Shit, I'm super interested in this concept of like duty and obligation, and it really came up from some of the debates that the one and only Big Papa Fascist has been on, whether it be at DebateCon or the whatever podcast or on his own platform. It's definitely made me think twice about, because I never thought about that. I never even just the question, even just the sole question of, do you have any duties or obligations? Question mark. Even that is I think that's, I don't think that's as easy to answer. I think you could just say a bunch of nice things. You could just say a bunch of good things, like, I have a duty to be a good person. I have a duty to look after the welfare of others. I have an obligation for whatever. I think you can say a bunch of pretty things, but I don't know. I don't have a straightforward answer to that, and I think Pisco's actually going down an interesting line of questioning here, in the sense that he's saying, didn't Trump have a duty to be in that situation room? I don't think there was a situation. I don't think there was a situation room assembled for this. But there should. But I think maybe his argument is that there should have been. I don't know. But he is bringing up the concept of duty, which I do find interesting. I'd want to interrogate that personally more too, for my own, not even just outside of, the stuff we're talking about right now, just in general. I think that's an interesting thing to think about. But he's going down an interesting line of questioning here. Now, does it have legal standing? I have no idea. He's a lawyer, so he can get very creative with words, but I don't know.
Like, what's the status? Didn't he have a duty to do that?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. Is that normal? Is the president normally involved in the Situation Room over matters of security relating to the certification of the election? Is that like a norm? Has that happened traditionally?
For issues of utmost national security, I think that
I'm sorry. I'm going to restate this over and over again until you answer the question.
I
Just
don't
say
know.
no. I want Pisco.
Yeah.
I just want Pisco to say no to this, okay? Because you asked a question like it's obvious.
There
Has it ever been historically? Do presidents typically get into a Situation Room to monitor security on the Capitol for January 6th? Is that like or during the certification election?
There hasn't been a thing like this.
Oh, so there's no precedent. Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
But that's an absurd. And I'm seeing a lot from DGG too, which you're like, all he has to do is show the exact factual analog, and then he owns that.
It could be any factual analog.
There is no. I mean, just beyond just like the actual.
Who is making most of the calls?
Wait. Let me finish this. Yeah. Beyond the precedent of the decision, what's the closest factual analog to January 6th in your mind that you can come up with?
I mean, if I think of like Bush during 9/11, I don't think Bush was making many specific calls. Like, here's a question. I don't remember. I don't know. Who made the call, for instance, to ground every single airplane on 9/11? Was that Bush or was that Rumsfeld? Or was that who? Or was it Cheney?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know if, and I could be wrong, and I'm open to anybody.
You, I just feel like that's not the same thing. That's not the same factual. That's not, that's different than an attack on the Capitol. That's not Capitol security. Do you understand what you're doing?
That was security of the entire country. Hold on. That was one of the most important roles ever delegated to the President of the United States, the protection of our country and the controlling of the FAA and the federal everything, right?
When I give factual analogs, you reject them. When I bring up responses and decisions in war, when I do in security, if I were to bring up Lincoln's role and close.
Hold on. What do you think I'm sorry. What do you think I've rejected?
Please. When I bring up factual analogs and say the president was highly involved there, you poo-poo them and you say that's not the same as Capitol security. I don't think it's the same thing. But
no,
when
it's
I'm
not that
asking
it's not
you for a factual analog, you're like, shutting down the airplanes on 9/11. Because it's an impossible thing. It's
not an impossible thing. When I say it's not a factual analog, I don't mean it's the same situation. I'm saying that I don't know if it's ever the case where the president is making like on the ground operational decisions. They're usually macro level things.
I believe this is a macro level thing.
You're wrong. You're wrong. No, it's not. This is an operational question. Deploying the National Guard to a...
This was super interesting. I remember reading this the first time we went over this Colorado decision. There is no textual evidence that Congress intended Section 3 to be any different. Furthermore, we agree with the electors that interpreting any of the Reconstruction Amendments, given their identical structure, as not self-executing would lead to absurd results. So they're hypotheticalizing, right? If these amendments required legislation to make them operative, and Congress could nullify them by simply not passing enacting legislation. Thus, the results of such inaction would mean that slavery remains legal, black citizens would be counted as less than full citizens for reapportionment, non-white male voters could be disenfranchised, and any individual who engaged in insurrection against the government would nonetheless be able to serve in government, regardless of whether 2/3 of Congress had lifted the disqualification. Surely that was not the drafters' intent. That's like the strongest thing that I've read from this whole thing up until this point. And I haven't read much of it. So maybe there's stronger stuff out there. Or maybe, maybe there's stronger stuff that makes this look weak. I don't know. But that was an interesting thing. I think I want to put this in the docket of things to analyze.
A specific area at a specific time you're just wrong if you think that. We're at an impasse. We're never getting past that. There's an operational question. Actually, hold on, wait. I just want to be clear so I can say this. Not only is it operational, I know that it's operational, and the record demonstrates that I'm correct there, because Miller did not have to contact President Donald Trump to authorize the deployment of forces. So on the macro level, the question that you're asking was already solved. This was operational, period.
So now you're referencing his authority and the basis of understanding whether or not someone has a responsibility. Now you're referencing the authority, and you're saying because someone else had the authority before, that's what you accused me of. Remember, you were like, "We're not talking about the authority. We're not talking about."
No,
authority.
Because you're conflating the authority with.
Let me finish my thought. When it's convenient for you to decide who has the responsibility, now you're referencing authority. And now you're saying, well, because someone under Trump had the authority, that defines the scope of his responsibility. No. Don't you think that's unfair and a double standard?
No, I don't think it's a double standard. You talked about who has the authority to authorize, like, the national guard on the macro level. Donald Trump does, and he did. Then you're asking, well, who should have deployed it at that specific point in time? It's whoever it's responsibly delegated to, whoever the responsibility is delegated to, which was Miller.
So, but Miller's not at fault.
He might be at fault. I don't know if it's Miller or if it was the general bureaucratic stuff happening around that time period, and then the 3 hours there. But that seems to be the issue. But I don't know if anybody was at fault. I don't know if anybody's at fault. It might have been the lack of preparation in response. Or if you want to blame somebody, you could blame Donald Trump for rallying people up and then sending them to the Capitol. I think these are areas where blame could be laid. But
is it the case that the deployment of the National Guard in a specific place is never a big strokes thing that it's appropriate for a president to do?
It seemed this is in response to a dynamically evolving situation. I don't think that that's the president's call. I don't think he's generally involved in those types of situations.
So I'm going to ask it one way.
Yeah.
Is it ever appropriate for the president directly to order the mobilization of the National Guard in response to a crisis?
Directly? I'm not aware of when that's ever happened. It doesn't seem to be the case.
No, not whether it happened. Is it ever appropriate for the President of the United States to order the mobilization of the National Guard through a subordinate?
If it is the case that it's always been delegated to the DOD guy, then no, it's not appropriate for the president to do that.
But can you think of a single time in history where the president's order of mobilization of the National Guard that you've ever thought, has that ever been appropriate in terms of, can you think of a historical example where that's been done?
I don't know of any, no.
So
can you give me one? Hold on, wait. I just want to be clear.
Well,
you just asked me, no, wait, hold on. I want to be clear. You asked me a question like it was
yeah,
so obvious and then laughed and I said no. So now you need to give me an example of where it happened.
Yeah, I think the president's deployment of the National Guard in the decision to do it in natural disasters, in numerous natural disasters, when there have been widespread...
You're talking and fact dumping, okay? I'm asking you for one example. One example. So, if it's so widespread and so common, just give me one example.
So in response, and someone can tell me if I'm wrong, in response to the LA riots, isn't it the case that George H.W. Bush mobilized federal assets against those riots? Is that the case?
Okay.
That is incorrect.
No, wait. Okay, also, wait, let's move on. Wait, don't spoil. Wait, hold on, no spoil. Pisco, what are you asking and what do you think my response is going to be?
I don't know I have no earthly idea what your response is going to be.
You have no idea based on the 5 times I've answered the same question. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't have any.
My response is going to be do you think that George H.W. Bush himself made phone calls to people, Or did he say, we're deploying the National Guard, and then he talked to his DOD person and said, let's get this done?
Okay, then the question will be better phrased as...
No, why? What do you mean better? We just got, that's the heart of our disagreement.
Wait, Stephen. Do you ever think there's been a case where the president has mobilized the National Guard?
Himself? Like, yeah. I'm not aware of any.
You're not aware of any time in history the president has ordered the mobilization of the National Guard?
No, are you?
It must have been the case prior to.
Wait, why does Pisco get to? Why does he get to ask a question so exasperated, like it's so obvious? And then every single time, just to be clear, I think even it's like 4 times today. Every time you ask a question, and when I don't have an answer, like, oh, and then you never give me a single example. So you don't know either. So I'm asking you. I'll ask you again, even though I think you're still going to pivot out of it and not actually answer. I don't know why you keep doing this. I'm asking you because you just failed on the George H.W. Bush. You totally failed, by the way. I'm injecting that whole argument. So now I'm asking you. Can you give me a single example of happening?
Wait, you just said something. How did I fail on George H.W. Bush?
Because you tried to bring that up as an example of him executing operational authority on something, and I said, well, did he, or did he just tell his DOD head like Trump told Miller?
So that situation was me trying to give an example of a president mobilizing federal assets. I don't know if it was specifically the National Guard. It was me trying to put an example of that, and you said it wasn't actually the president doing it. It was likely one of his subordinates. That's what you said in response to that.
Yes. But that's what happened on January 6th. Trump authorized it, and then his subordinates did it, just like with George H.W. Bush.
God. No, what I'm saying is that the president took an active role and took a decision to mobilize. That he didn't just delegate it. He was the one who mobilized it.
Okay, show me where that happens, and we can just go and read it.
Okay, but is there a single, if I can bring you a single example of a president ordering the mobilization of the National Guard, what will that do for the argument?
At the very least, it'll show me there's some precedent for it. I just haven't heard of this. I'm just curious if it happens.
If it did, what would be of your, like, it wouldn't advance the argument at all, would it?
It would a little bit, because right now I'm not aware of this ever happening. Ever.
You're not aware of the president ever mobilizing the National Guard. That's what we're looking for, right?
I'm not aware of the president making a phone call to like a commanding officer in the National Guard and saying, move your troops here. That's what I'm not aware of. I've never heard of that happening before.
So what exactly would I need to show in terms of that? Like, if the National Guard was mobilized and there was a declaration from the president, would that be enough? Or would you be like, it's not enough evidence that he took sufficiently operational minutia role?
Okay, hold on. Just to be clear, so that we're not changing, because this happens a lot, okay? Initially, you told me that President Trump should have made a phone call and gone beneath Miller to authorize. Wait. Did you say that or no?
No, I think he should have if Miller was unwilling to do. Like, let's say he called Miller and Miller said, "No, we're not doing that." I think he should have called. The
Secretary of the Army, the guy under.
Exactly, 100%.
Yes.
But absent that, he should have ordered Miller. And I was trying to obviate the need for the chain of command question that you were bringing up, which is we can get rid of that by just saying Trump should have ordered Miller. That's a very easy dodge of that whole problem.
Okay, but it seems like, do you agree that Trump had already authorized Miller to provide the Capitol with whatever they needed?
He was already authorized before Trump did anything. He was authorized. Everyone agrees he's authorized.
Okay, then Miller's lack of response he didn't need Trump at that point. It was him making the call.
My entire argument is that Trump has a freestanding responsibility to defend the country and defend the Constitution.
Do you think Trump had enough information available to him to know that how?
Yes, we had knowledge that the Capitol had been breached.
I'm sorry, hold on. I don't know. I don't understand. Okay, the question is not, had the Capitol been breached? The question was, do we need to deploy the National Guard to the Capitol to maintain the situation? Do you think that Donald Trump knew that?
Yesterday I asked you.
He's not going to answer that question.
The Capitol was breached. Do you think that they should have mobilized National Guard? You said yes.
Did I say that? If I said that, I was an idiot.
That's my recollection, and we can go back and...
Okay, we can go back and look at it. I don't recall saying that. Because it seems like with the information in the Situation Room, nobody had a good answer to that.
So you're not sure if at the time that it made sense. You're saying it's still on the air whether it was a good idea to mobilize the National Guard given the information that was available at the time?
That seems to be the case. Also, to be clear, that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of everybody that was working the control room that night. So you're the only one here that had godlike information knowing exactly when the National Guard could have been deployed. Just to be clear, you're standing alone on an island with that opinion. But go ahead.
That is not the case. That is not true. We know that you said yourself yesterday that there were National Guard units in the immediate area, that we know from their testimony that the actual people, the National Guard people, were calling, asking why they weren't being deployed. And so...
Hold on, I'm sorry, how do you think that counters anything I just said?
In terms of the ability for these people to intervene, or at least get started on the process, why would we have a presumption that President thought it was impossible for them to go into the situation?
Nobody's asking if it was impossible. The National Guard that was there, part of the whole delineation of responsibilities, there was incredibly narrow mission scope. The National Guard that was deployed there was explicitly and specifically provided with instructions to only manage traffic outside of the Capitol. So my question to you is, do you think that Donald Trump had more situational awareness of what was happening in the Capitol than the people in the Situation Room that didn't know what call to make?
We don't know the total scope of Trump's awareness at the time.
Do you think, is it reasonable to assume it was higher than the people in the Situation Room?
I think it's reasonable to assume that the President of the United States was aware of what was going on in the Capitol.
Why did you take my very specific statement and then make it so vague as to be meaningless?
More or less than Miller? I mean, Trump isn't the one having the conversations and the phone calls with these individuals. Fair?
Yes. So he's not in the Situation Room. He's not involved on the ground analysis. I'm pretty sure it wasn't just sitting in his bedroom like stewing at the fucking TV the whole time. So
so let's even look at that situation, right? Let's look at that entire situation. That Donald Trump is staring at the news and not being involved and questioning and wondering about what's going on at the Capitol and not being taking a role and trying to be like, even if it was the case that he was not informed, isn't that by itself a dereliction of duty? The fact that he wouldn't be up to date.
Is it a dereliction of duty? No. If he was like a really good dude, should he have been more involved? Maybe. I don't know how often Trump is involved on like on the ground operational deployment.
You don't even think he has a duty if the Capitol's being attacked? You don't even think President Trump has a duty to stay informed about it?
Maybe it'd be nice too. That's a totally separate conversation.
I'm just asking, like, what kind of responsibility are you going to impose at all for Trump? You're saying he doesn't have a responsibility.
Trump already authorized.
Restate
everything.
I just want to finish this. You don't think he has a responsibility to actually make the decision, and what I'm hearing from you, what you're saying now is you think it's possible he might not even have a responsibility to stay informed.
But I don't know. I don't necessarily think of operationally. No.
You don't think he has a responsibility to stay informed about January 6th attack?
Okay, we're going to do this again, okay? This is going to be the sixth time you've gotten destroyed on this point. When you ask a question exactly...
Yeah, he's just using a different word now. Before he was using duty, now he's using responsibility. It is an interesting question. I just don't know how legally relevant it is. I don't know how the law interprets words like duty or responsibility or things like that. I mean, that's why I'm looking up this document the way I am right now, because I want to know how the Colorado Supreme Court interpreted the word engage, because I think that word is what ties Trump to this decision. But yeah, he's just moving the goalposts, as they say.
Exasperatedly. And then I'm going to ask you, is there examples of presidents that run to situation rooms to keep up to date on situations that are similar to this?
Yes, 100% there is.
Okay.
9/11.
So 9/11. Okay, so you've abandoned this. You're totally wrong. Sorry. Multiple planes had already hit, and Bush was still reading the book in the room. I lived this history. I don't remember how old you are, but you're just wrong. So you totally forfeit that argument. Move to the next one. You're wrong. You're just wrong. You have no example. If you bring up 9/11, you've already completed, because so many decisions were being made. Hold on. Do you know so many key national defense decisions were being made with no input from George Bush at all? Do you agree with that?
True. 100%.
So then you're already completely wrong on everything relating to 9/11.
I am not demanding that Trump have a knowledge of every single thing that's going on with respect to January 6th. That is not my standard for the president. I'm not demanding that of them. Let me make it clear. I'm not saying that George Bush knew everything about every agency that was happening during 9/11. But after the attacks, there were a lot of responses that the United States was coordinating in a whole of government response to what was going on. That involved strikes on certain countries and camps in Al-Qaeda. I think those happened like that day or the next day, right, Ruminate? I think that's true. It involved coordinating other branches of the federal government. And my recollection from reading various sources on 9/11 and what the Bush's response was that day, I know the vice president took a lot of control that day while he was in but even on Air Force One, Bush was talking to and staying informed about what was going on with the government. I think that's pretty much borne out in the facts. There's images of George Bush
from what I recall, when they told him at the school, they quickly got him out of the school. I don't know if it was in 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, but he was quickly in the air on Air Force One.
And they were on the phone.
This is, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just restating because I feel like I'm like being made crazy right now. When they were on the phone, okay, I'm just stating fact. If you disagree, I don't even care to discuss this with you. When Bush is on the phone, Bush is never having a call with an airplane pilot, a military person, or any of this shit.
God.
Bush is almost exclusively talking to high-level officials to see what the macro situation should be. And there might even be, Trump already fulfilled those responsibilities. When he said, you can have whatever you need. He already did. It was delegated to Miller. Full stop, period, boom. Miller had everything he needed. He made the call. He was 3 hours late. That's it.
Just to be precise, right now we're talking about...
This is kind of nostalgic. I mean, I'm nostalgic. I mean, it was like a month ago, but just seeing, I remember seeing Destiny debate live in person. It is like this. It's exactly like this. He is like always firing on all cylinders. Even on, he takes like ADHD medication. Like even on ADHD medication, which I don't know if he was on it. I think he was on it for this, but sometimes he's not. Sometimes he is, but I think he was. What he mentioned earlier, I think in the stream or later in the stream, was that he generally takes it when he doesn't take it when he wants to play a video game and he wants to like kind of autistically focus on the video game. But yeah, he is like this. He is literally like this. All right, I'm gonna switch over to Twitch and Kick. So, yo, what's up, Critical? Oh, I got a YouTube chat. There we go. Fucking hanging out on the old YouTube. Fucking awesome. It's good to see. That's refreshing to just see like a YouTube chat right there. Be like, oh, somebody's on the YouTube. Let me see this bad boy. Where are we at here? Yeah, nice. I'll see you on Twitch. Yeah, I'm gonna switch over to Twitch now. I've just been over here because I can't watch this on Twitch. So, but I watched as much as I want to watch of it tonight. I've been looking over this document, kind of just grabbing some quotes that I wanted to grab. So, and absorbing this conversation because I thought it was interesting and just to kind of bounce it off some of the stuff I've been looking at here. But yeah, thank you for going over to the YouTube and throwing some fucking support over there. That's fucking cool. It's cool to see like a YouTube symbol right there being like, oh, somebody's chatting on YouTube. Fucking sweet. But yeah, I'm gonna switch over. I'm gonna switch over now and take a quick break. So give me about 5 minutes, then I'll be signed on to the other stream. But thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, Inoka. Thank you, Criticorn. And I will see you guys over there. Peace.